Welcome back into the Dirt Head Shed. It's Monday morning and I actually have a week in the shop, so we're gonna get busy. We're gonna get busy on the Nissan. This thing needs to be able to drive by the end of the week. Maybe not down the street, but at least steer, stop, move around the shop. Let's get busy. I moved everything around, something different to look at. I still got junk everywhere, but that's not gonna go away. All right, back out here. It's Monday morning. I've got a full week in the shop and it's time to get busy on this truck. I'm gonna end up having to bounce around between this truck and I also got a bunch of like household chores I gotta do this week, but right now I wanna focus on getting the gas tank together in this. I've got the thing sort of jacked up with a transmission jack right now, and the positioning is pretty close to where it's gonna have to live. So I think it's time to get under here and figure out what's next. There we go. So the Nissan's back on the lift, and I figured I'd show you some of the little trinkets that I've done to it to get it to this point. Exhaust, it's fully done. Well, fully done. Got a cat in there. It's got a Dynamax Super Turbo muffler in it. So the exhaust is all tucked up high and above the frame rails. Front suspension, bunch of spider eggs over here, but drop spindles, airlift 2500 airbags, and then I did, you can kind of see the bag mount up there. Let's see. You can kind of see the airbag mount all fabricated and stuff. This thing's pretty dialed. I also did a like a strut rod eliminator. So this thing would normally have had a strut rod that bolted on here and went forward. But when I body dropped it and I lowered the core support, you kind of ditch that area to be able to mount the strut rods to. So I fabricated this second sort of pivot point on the control arm, and that turns it into essentially into an A-arm, like rather than having to have a bolt-on strut rod going forward. This back portion here takes care of that part of the job. So there's a ton of work in this thing, and a lot of it I actually got to a fairly completed point, and then I parked it. So it's time to sort of pick up the pieces and get busy on this thing again. I do need to do front shock mounts on it at some point, and it needs rear shock mounts. So it seems like everything I have that's airbagged, I kind of never do the front shock mounts on. And that's partly because they're a total pain in the butt. We will cross that bridge when we get to it. Right now, we're gonna go over here and mess with the gas tank. There we go. Okay, let's look under here and see what we got to do. So basically, I just want the front of the gas tank up a little bit. This has a bracket that bolts the tank to the frame, and it looks like I could probably just throw a spacer in between here and here, and we can get the front of this gas tank up. Gotta look and see if I have room up here to go up a little bit, and it appears that I do. So let's go ahead and unbolt this, and then we'll push that up and see what we got to do to make a spacer out of that. Piece of cake. Okay. Let's see what we got to do here. I'm gonna go grab some washers and spacers and junk and see if we can just lift that right up to there. I think that's gonna be the jam. This piece can be pretty simple. It's just a spacer. So a piece of flat bar with 3 holes drilled in it is gonna do a better job than 3 sets of stacked washers. go see if one of these will get us the height we need or if we need to stack 2 of them in there. There's one. If I can, right now we're safe above the frame. If I can get even just a little more than that, then I will feel pretty good about it. So we got 2 spacers in there right now, 2 1/4-inch pieces of flat bar, and that puts the gas tank well above the frame rails, like quite a bit above. But I think it feels like I'm crashing into parts of the body now. So we might have to just run one of those 1/4-inch spacers. Let's see. Oh yeah, it's like right up against it. Take one of these guys back out. We're gonna do that. We're gonna go with 1 1/4-inch thick spacer, drill some holes in it, put the bolts back in, and we should be good to go on that. I got wrapped up talking on the phone, and I ended up putting the spacer in place. I just grabbed some longer bolts from my random metric hardware bin and slammed that thing back home. And now it's time to lower this thing back down, and we'll start building the back bracket. That's the one that's going to take all the work. I just got to get back in the groove. I feel like I'm having such a hard time just making parts and brackets and stuff. Need to start making parts instead of excuses, if you know what I mean. Coming down. That's probably good. I can work right here. I think I can get my transmission jack under there to support it. I feel like I'm cheating with all these tools. It's kind of a mess in here with all this extra stuff in the way. Maybe need to get some of this to move so that I can kind of see where I'm working. This brake setup has been frustrating all along. It's really in the way. Let's get this bracket off of here and see what we're working with. All right. This can come on out. I think what I need to do is start by building a flange for this. Something that's heavy duty enough that I can weld tube to it and it's not gonna like distort or bend or whatever, because it does have to support the weight of the gas tank, which when it's full can be pretty heavy, and then if you're, you know, bouncing down the road, the thing's got kind of a hard job to do. So let me break out the cardboard and the scissors and we will get busy. I'm trying out a new pen. This is a Dura ink from Markall. I got this thing at the welder supply shop the other day. I'm curious to see how it's working out. I've always used Sharpies and have always liked them a lot, but I keep getting certain ones that are like dried out when I get them or whatever. So kind of curious to see if this thing might be a little more industrial. I don't know. Usually if the welder supply carries it, it can't be all bad. I haven't been super stoked on the Milwaukee Inksol. They seem like a good pen, but the ink isn't quite as dark black, and it doesn't show up on some of the metal that I use as well. The other thing, it seems like it washes off pretty easily with chemicals like WD-40 and stuff. Boom. Let's go make this out of metal. Cut, grind, weld, repeat. Somebody needs to buy these fender flares so I can get them out of my way. Who's got a Super Duty that needs some big old honking fender flares? Let's see if this thing fits. And we'll mark the holes to drill. I think right there, that's my jam. All right, we go run this thing over to the drill press, drill out those 3 holes so that it's got something to mount to, and then I just got to like fine tune that edge, and this thing should be good to go. Gosh, this stuff's all in my way. I'm gonna have to sort that out next. So I've got the flange bolted on here to the tank, and then I just grabbed a piece of 1-inch 90 well tubing, and I'm just gonna kind of fit it in here and I'm gonna keep it simple. I'm gonna notch this up here, I'm gonna weld it to the cross member for the bags and just drop right down to that plate that I made. So I'm gonna go grind this up, fit it a little bit, and we will get this one tacked in. Make sure I'm in a good spot on that flange to make it as strong as possible. And we'll tack it. I'm going to tack it in 3 spots. And tack it in 3 spots, that way hopefully it's done moving before I pull it out. Now we got to come up with one for over here, but I want to make sure that I don't interfere with like allowing, you know, brake lines and electrical to run between the bag and the frame. All right, I got the 2 tubes in there to support the flange, and I just made a few little gussets so that we can kind of distribute that load even a little bit more. So let's tack these guys in, and then we'll pull this unit out and weld it up on the bench. That's the look I want. Okay, and then we got one more going down here on the flange. Cool. All right, let's pull this thing out of here and weld it up. Since the welder's already here, we'll just make a little welding table out of the bed of the truck, or the back of the truck. That'll work. Go ahead and burn this thing all together. See if I can remember how to weld today. This one here is going to be the most visible, so we'll start over here in a less visible spot. Heck yeah. Stoked, I'm working on my Nissan. I'm glad I went with that 90 well tubing on this tube. I had pulled out some that was like 065, and I was like, that would probably do the job, but I want to be able to like throw a good bead on it and not worry about burning through. So we are cranking. This is a funky little corner. Waiting for my helmet to flash. We got a little bit of weird overlap here. I'll probably end up going and sanding a little bit off that edge. Sick. Doing it. This will be the last little spot that I can weld off the truck. So we'll knock this little weld out and then go through, clean off any of the weld berries and slag, and paint this thing up. Get it ready to go on the truck. That one looks good. Dang! Let's see how I can get this fished in here without scratching it all to heck. So, there we go. We'll get it bolted down and then we'll jack the tank back up and weld that puppy in. Looking good. I'll take that. This is going to be the first time this gas tank has been supported by the truck in like 2 years. Well, maybe not that long, but jack is out and it's in there on its own. It's not being held up with ratchet straps or something. Cool. Gas tank's raised 1/4 inch in the front and probably close to 1.5 inches in the back. So we should be good to go if I'm driving this thing super low. All right, I got my mess swept up. All the grinding dust is off the floor. I think the next step on here is to figure out the rear brakes on this thing. Time to figure out where it's all gonna land and make it fit nice and clean and easy and not get in the way of something else. So let's start tackling this. I know we got the brake line that went to both of the drums is a little wide now that I narrowed the axle, so we'll probably end up making a new hard line and remounting the junction block there and hose. And then we got to get this proportioning valve. It's like a load sensing proportioning valve. I don't really want to delete everything about it, but I don't really know what to do here. It's got 2 lines going up to the front. Last time I tried to like delete one of these, I just created more problems for myself. This thing has always stopped fine, so I think what I'm going to do is just shorten up the lines that go into this unit and reflare them over here so that I can mount the unit like right here. I'm going to have a little bit of extra space under the bed because I'm doing the body drop and because I'm going to be adding an extra spacer in there. So I think if I get this unit over to here and I mount it properly, I should be able to get it to do its job and not be in the way of anything. So let's try, let me just mark the lines and then we'll start cutting them off and moving this thing into place. Do a little clippy-doo. Okay, let's get that out of the way. Cool. This is like the kind of work that I really don't like doing, but you gotta do it. All right, I've got this little proportioning valve or load sensing proportioning valve. Like, I've got it as small as I can get it. I took this plastic guard off it. I trimmed a little bit off of the arm that it has. And I'm kind of figuring I'm gonna mount it right here. It originally, I believe, was mounted this way. Now it can mount this way. The bleeder will still be at the highest point of it, so it should be able to bleed out any air that's in the system. Super quick tab. And I grabbed some hardware, so we should be able to fit this thing up and get it into place. Basically just trying to get it down as low as possible to where it's gonna clear the bed, but I don't want it to like rub a hole in this fuel filler neck. So we'll call that good. All right, that is in place, and I can weld it in and call that little mount done. I might as well just weld the whole thing. That's where that's going to live. Let that thing cool for a second, throw some black paint on it, and then we should be able to bolt the valve on there kind of permanently. There we go. Hardware should just be right. Cool. Figuring it out, right? Little baby steps. All right, the valve is in place. That's kind of a cool solution to that problem. I just went through and cut those lines down, flared them, reinserted them, got them hopefully in the right orientation. I checked it about a dozen times. I was using my Master Cool, I think is the name of this. It's a hydraulic tubing flare deal. Yeah, Master Cool Universal Hydraulic Flare Tool. I bought this thing years ago and it has been really nice to have. Not totally necessary, but it is convenient, that's for sure. We need to go ahead and bust out this, the hard line from the valve to this tab, and that'll be for the soft line that goes down to the axle. So that's going to be the next move. We've got the brake line coming out of that valve block now, and then I came over, I welded a tab on the gas tank mount that I did earlier on that down tube, and now we're doing a little tab on the axle, just made out of a piece of angle iron. It's going to go right here, and that is going to be what this T-block mounts to. So I will just want to make sure it's out of the way of the airbag and isn't going to interfere with shocks when I get those going. Cool. That is more than heavy duty enough. Once that cools down, I can mount it and we can throw some paint on it and then start doing the lines out to the brake drums. Hopefully that's the last of the little welding projects for right now. And we can get on to actually pumping and bleeding these brakes. That's going to be rad. All right, I'm making the last of the brake lines. This is the one that goes across the axle from the T over to the driver's side drum brake. So this is the longest brake line of the bunch. Saved it for last. Hopefully I don't screw it up. Let's get this thing out of here. Put that tool away hopefully and grab the wire wheel and the brush or the grinder with the wire wheel on it. Clean up that housing a little bit. This thing's bitching. Brake line. Check. Cool. We got all the hard lines in. Soft line goes up to the frame over here, to the tab, which that goes over here to the load sensing proportioning valve. I was able to do this whole system without even going to the store. That's a win. I guess it's time to bleed these out. I'm going to go in and have dinner and see if I can get one of my kids to come out here and pump the brakes. Where the heck is my broom? Where the heck is my broom? Seriously. Alright, it is Tuesday. I'm cleaning up yesterday's mess. That was good. Brakes are bled. All that stuff is buttoned up. I had my daughter out here helping me pump the brakes so that I could bleed out all the air, and they are working, which is awesome. And then this morning I actually came in and I rehooked up my parking brake cables. They're all not dangling under here anymore. So I think the last thing to do on this in order to make it movable under its own power is to start with the steering. The column's in there and the box is in there, but the shaft between the two is missing. So I'm gonna finish sweeping this up, and we will get the truck back down and try and knock that out. Whew, this is a busy truck. There's a lot going on in here from when I took the wheel well out. But what we're working on here is steering box. You can see the steering shaft right there. That needs to get hooked back up to the column, which is right there. These things had a rag joint that would have been over here at this end. And when this thing gets body dropped as much as it is, the steering column is lowered down to the chassis from where the steering column was originally. So I believe the angle that this joint would have to make is too steep for a rag joint. So check this little trick out. Coming over here, here is the rag joint that came out of the rig, and here is a steering shaft that came out of a Nissan Pathfinder. So you can see the Pathfinder steering shaft has a regular U-joint, which can take a whole lot more angle than that rag joint. So what we got to do is modify everything so that it's the right length and everything for the Nissan. So you can see here the rag joint steering shaft is like 3 inches shorter than the one from the U-joint style that came out of the Pathfinder. So I think what I've got to do here is either shorten this up if it's splined all the way through, just shorten this section of this one up and then use this input shaft in here. Or I may have to cut the whole thing apart and put this whole section onto the U-joint style. So let's dig in and see what we really got to do. Let's start messing with this one first, because I can mess with this steering shaft, and if I screw it up, worst comes to worst, I just cut the whole thing off and weld this whole unit onto this joint. Let's go ahead and clamp this thing in here and see if we can get it apart. Back in the day when we would do body lifts and stuff, we would have to take all these things apart, and some rigs would have like a nylon thing in them that you have to like knock through, and some of them have a spring and they'll have like a spring and a keyway. We'll see what this one has. There we go. All right, we got that female end off of that. My main thing I was questioning was how far this thing is splined inside. And that basically, I'm just questioning that so that I can see if I can shorten it up to match the other one of these to be that long. We're in luck. This thing is splined all the way through. So I can go ahead and cut 1.25 inches off of this thing, no problem. Plug your ears, it's gonna be loud. Yeah, perfect. It wasn't actually perfect. I need to deburr the inside. Hot. I really like these mods. I went down to the wrecking yard and looked around and found that that the Nissan Pathfinders have a regular U-joint instead of a rag joint. And I was like, that's genius. I can like build this new steering column without having to go and order like a $70 Borgeson joint. So yeah, stoked. This was like a total junkyard find, and it hopefully will do the job. Just throw it right there on the ground. Try and get fancy. Let's see what happens. All right, I'm gonna leave this kind of short, and then we can get it hooked onto the steering column and then kind of knock it back to the steering box. Piece of cake. Check it out, it's all one unit. I feel like I should detail and paint this thing right now, but I also just want to see this thing go together. We'll get the end up at the steering column put in first. That's the business. What a cool mod. If this works, we're all going out for ice cream. This is rad. Dang, I just dropped something. So what we need to do is make sure the box is centered, the wheels are centered, and the steering wheel is kind of straight. Oh my gosh, I have anti-seize everywhere. I think we're getting it. Steering wheel is still pretty straight. We're getting it. We've got the shaft in there and the slips doing its job. I've been hitting on the vice grips here to get this knocked onto the steering column. And it's getting close, so I feel like I need to go back a little bit with this one and use the pinch bolt so that I can knock out the splines in the center here just a little more. So you can see now this is the end that's got the universal joint, and that is able to take the angle that is increased because of the body drop much better. And now we've got full steering motion without any bind in these joints, which is awesome. All right, I got my battery kind of hooked up. Let's see if it'll fire up again. It's dark in here with all the windows taped off. I don't know if you've been questioning the taping off of the glass, it's because when you're cutting and grinding, the sparks will burn into your glass and ruin it. That didn't work at all. All right, let's try that. Let's try that. Do we have power? We do. All right, let's fire this puppy up. So much better now that it's got oil pressure and stuff. It's not like immediately, I'm trying to let the clutch out and hope it doesn't grab. It's not like immediately just rattling like crazy. Oh no, there's a dent on my fender. I must have not fixed. Let's see what we got here. Power steering. Oh yeah, we're totally winning. Totally winning. All right, let's see if it's got brakes. How am I gonna do this? Let's see if it'll run. Will it run if I pull the battery off? It appears that it'll stay running. That's cool. I think that means the alternator's working. All right, let's pull this thing outside. Dude, I'm stoked. Let's see if this thing will move under its own power. It seems to be moving under its own power. Woohoo! It's doing it. It's moving out of the garage. It's super mobile. Look at this. That is rad. It's out of the shop. It's out of the shop. See that? It's so cool. All right, let's air it out. I want to see how it looks. Hammered. It's so hammered. Front. Oh, you can hear the ground just crunching on the sheet metal. It's perfect. Look at that. So cool. Absolutely hammered onto the ground. I love it. I am stoked. The Nissan is no longer a rig that just has to be pushed around on a floor jack. It steers, it stops, it moves under its own power. It even has parking brakes. That was like such a win for a few days of work. I don't know why I made it take this long. This truck is rad. Thanks for watching the Dirthead Shed. We'll be back next week.